Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. This is going to be my Marvel Phase 4 timeline video. There have been a couple changes. They've announced some things, especially like Brie Larson, Captain Marvel. She's only in talks right now, but I'll totally explain what's going on. So here we go. This is a full Phase 3 snapshot. We're still considering Inhumans to be a part of it, even though they took it off the schedule in terms of dates. It's just to be determined. Kevin Feige's like, we're still committed to an Inhumans movie, so it's somewhere floating in the ether. Just looking at it right here, the thing I'm most excited about, I mean, obviously we're all excited about Infinity War, Infinity Gauntlet, Thanos versus the Avengers, but I'm mostly excited about the new characters that we haven't seen yet. That means Captain Marvel, Doctor Strange, the Wasp, and yeah, we've seen a bunch of Spider-Man films, but we haven't seen this new Spider-Man in his own film, so gonna be so much fun. And yes, Spider-Man is part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so even though Sony is gonna be making most of the money from that movie, it's a co-production with Marvel. They're deeply involved in it on a creative level, so that's why it's on the Phase 3 timeline. So let's just start with the beginning. We've already seen Captain America Civil War. That's the first official film in Phase 3, setting things off, just kind of letting you know how things are going to be different. The Avengers are splitting, we're getting Secret Avengers, we're getting Tony Stark's government version of the Avengers, so already sweeping changes. And we haven't even gotten into Black Panther or the new characters yet. So the next big movie at the end of this year is going to be Doctor Strange. They're treating that kind of like they treated Ant-Man. It's going to be this funny film that's connected to all the other Marvel films, but only in a small way. It's kind of exists by itself because it's so weird, and then they'll weave it into the larger universe. Like, we had Avengers moments during Ant-Man, but it was largely a self-contained story. The way I'm thinking about Doctor Strange right now is it's going to be a little bit like The Matrix and Inception on acid with some very mystical elements. It's going to set precedent for reality being altered, different dimensions, some of the more cosmic ideas in the Marvel Universe that we haven't really addressed yet. Demythology that you would normally see in a Thor movie. Thor movies are all about the combination of science and mythology. It's going to be kind of the same idea with Doctor Strange, just in a much weirder, awesome way. So a lot of you are asking, what about Infinity Gem? Is the Eye of Agamotto going to be the Soul Gem or one of the other gems like the Time Gem? It's totally possible, but if we are going to see a gem during Doctor Strange, that's what it would probably be. Now, there are two more gems, and they could appear in any of the movies. Like, they could put the Soul Gem in the Black Panther movie if they really wanted to. But what I'll do is I talk about each of these movies, I'll just say, like, if they're going to do a gem, it's probably going to be this thing or that thing. So moving on to the next big movie, Guardians of the Galaxy. That's going to be the big spring movie next year. I just did a video about it, so I talked a little bit about how they might do the Time Gem, because there's a very Groundhog's Day type situation with Star Fox that might end up being the person who is Star-Lord's father. So I'll put a link in the description to that. But supposedly, Thanos isn't going to be a big part of the film, not as big as he was in the first Guardians film. It'll mostly be about tracking down Peter Quill's father and Elizabeth Debicki, who's going to be the big villain. She'll be like the big antagonist of that movie, so there'll be like this really big story, but it's not going to cross over with the Avengers franchise yet. Peter Quill is currently the only confirmed character from Guardians that will appear in Infinity War. We might see other Guardians crossover, but I've only heard about Peter Quill so far. So Peter Quill will be an honorary Avenger during Infinity War. But what I'm expecting is we see James Gunn here holding Thor's hammer. That doesn't necessarily guarantee that it's going to connect with Thor Ragnarok, but they're two very cosmic movies in the Marvel Universe right now. It's been a while, but at the end of Dark World, they brought the reality gem to the collector, so Guardians has already crossed over with the Thor movies. It makes sense they would do a repeat of that and they would cross those movies over again. But next big movie after that will be the Spider-Man solo film, the new Spider-Man solo film, which is supposed to be a trilogy, but they've only really been talking about the first one, which is called Spider-Man Homecoming. I'm assuming now, based on what they're saying, that Michael Keaton has come back onto the film. He was announced early on, but then talks broke off, but then they announced a whole bunch of other stuff about the film. Then he came back on. So it's like Michael Keaton got on the Spider-Man party bus, decided he wanted to get off for a couple stops, and then get back on a couple blocks later. So unless we hear otherwise, we'll assume he's back on the project. He's probably playing the Vulture. He could be playing another villain. He's supposed to be the villain of the movie. But the other big thing is that we're going to see Tony Stark and maybe Captain America. Remains to be seen if we'll see Captain America. It's just that they're two big heroes for the Spider-Man character, but they've only announced that Tony Stark is going to cross over. Chris Evans has just been like, I would totally love to be in that Spider-Man movie, and Spider-Man is such a big fan of Captain America, they might find a way to make it work. But you have to remember that Captain America is a fugitive right now as of the end of Civil War, so it's a little bit harder to bring him out in public. Logically, it just doesn't make as much sense to bring him into the movie, so I'm not expecting Captain America. What I think is going to be happening with Tony Stark in the film is that he will just give Spider-Man some new tech for his suit. They say he's going to have the webbing underneath his arms like he does in the comics. Like that'll be one of the new additions to the suit. So it'll still kind of look like the Civil War suit, there'll just be some extra stuff added to it. And if you're still confused about the Stark Tech mechanical shooters that he got at the end of the film, really it's kind of a Swiss Army all-purpose device. It's a web shooter, it's the spider signal from the comics, it probably does a bunch of other stuff too, he probably has communicator, pretty much anything that he might need on the go. So what I'm expecting is that Tony Stark will just give him some new toys during the film. Next big film after that is Thor Ragnarok. So this is where shit gets real in the Marvel Universe. Ragnarok is all about the idea of destruction, rebirth. So we know Hela is going to be the main villain. It's going to be Cate Blanchett. They have this murderer's row of the most amazing actors ever in this movie. It's going to be so crazy. It's going to be like Shakespeare in space. They'll be dealing with super weird concepts like life and death. The Asgardian version of death is very different from the human version of death. So I'm definitely expecting to see Thanos and a new Infinity Gem in this movie. I know a lot of people are wondering if Heimdall has the soul gem and that's what gives him his power to see across time and space. It's totally possible, but I do think that we will revisit Odin's vault, because if you look here from the first Thor film, there's actually a working Infinity Gauntlet with the gems in it. Now, Kevin Feige explained that when they made that movie, it was intended to be more of like a wink at the fans, like, hey, look at this, isn't this gonna make you poop your pants? They didn't really have their full phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 plan completely worked out all the way up to Infinity War. They just knew that that's what they were trying to get to eventually. So if we go back to Odin's Vault, expect to see some really cool Easter eggs, but don't expect to see all the same Easter eggs from the first Thor film. Next big film, Black Panther. I'm so excited about this. They've announced the director, they've announced a whole bunch of Oscar-worthy actors, so it's gonna be like Thor Ragnarok, and that they just have like the best actors you could possibly imagine all crammed into the same movie. Like, it's almost baffling how much talent they have attached to this Black Panther movie. Like, Lupita Nyong'o just signed on, and even if you don't know a lot about Black Panther, I would recommend that you check out the new Black Panther comic. It is currently the highest-selling Marvel comic book this year. So Black Panther is the badass of 2016 so far, although they just launched Marvel Civil War 2, so that will probably outsell Black Panther. But up to this point, Black Panther has been outselling the Avengers, pretty much everybody else in the Marvel Universe. So we already kind of know what the big MacGuffin of this movie is going to be. Vibranium. Vibranium is such a big concept to Wakanda, but we're going to learn all about their mythology. It's another one of those Marvel movies that's heavy into mythology, so it's going to be really awesome and weird like Doctor Strange, as well as Thor with the way it deals with the ideas of life and death, because Black Panther teased that during Captain America Civil War. Our idea of death is not like yours. It's more of a jumping off point. Black Panther was talking about being king of the dead, as in having access to the memories of all the previous Black Panthers. It's a really weird concept that they'll totally explain in the movie in a really simple way. So what's going to happen after Black Panther is that Infinity War Part 1 will be the jumping off point for Thanos assembling the Infinity Gauntlet and doing something crazy. I'm expecting the second Infinity War movie to be the story of how the Avengers fix everything and get the gauntlet off of his hand. So just as a reminder, in that first Infinity War film, we'll probably see a reconciliation between Captain America and Iron Man, an official one on screen. They don't totally hate each other, but they kind of went their separate ways at the end of Civil War. But it'll also be the next Spider-Man crossover. Spider-Man will officially be part of the Avengers. He's supposed to get a new suit. The Russos that are directing Infinity War said that when Spider-Man comes back, he'll probably have a different suit. But after that first Infinity War film, we're going to get Ant-Man and the Wasp, so we'll probably learn all about the microverse. We're supposed to see Janet Van Dyne. Remember, the reason they said that she wasn't in the first film is because she supposedly died, when really she just got lost in the quantum realm. So we'll see Hope Van Dyne take the mantle of the Wasp, but we'll also probably see flashbacks with Sharon Stone, who has just been cast to play Janet Van Dyne. She said the funniest thing when people were asking her about the Ant-Man sequel, she's like, I have a wee role, as in tiny role. So everyone's like, oh, she's probably talking about a literally tiny role, meaning she would be Janet Van Dyne. So it'll be like a really funny Basic Instinct reunion between her and Michael Douglas. Next big film after Ant-Man and the Wasp, though, is kind of the order of the day because we've been talking about Brie Larson, but Captain Marvel. She had the most hilarious comment when they first asked her about it. She was like, Captain Marvel, isn't that a guy? Are they gonna gender bend it? It was some comment like that. It was totally adorable. I'm totally fine with her not really knowing who Captain Marvel is in the comics. That's really the job of the writers, the producers, to make sure that the character comes across on screen and explaining who that is to the actor whenever they're cast. But as of this week, the casting rumor became much more of a real thing, like, oh, she is definitely in final talks. So because her solo film isn't going to be till 2019, I mean, that's a long ways off, like the tail end of Phase 3, we probably won't see her for the first time till the first Infinity War film in 2018. So she'll probably be the Black Panther, Spider-Man type character of that film. Like Spider-Man, Black Panther, not the biggest parts of Civil War, but still really important, so that'll probably be how she's introduced during Infinity War. But just get hyped, because after Captain Marvel is Infinity War Part 2, that will be like the giant, crazy film of the Marvel Universe. It'll be the tail end, even though Inhumans might end up happening after that. But I think even if you haven't read any of the Infinity Gauntlet storyline comic books, like Thanos' Quest, the Infinity Gauntlet, Infinity War, you have a broad idea of what's going to be happening. Thanos gets the gauntlet, assembles all the gems, destroys all reality while the Avengers try to stop him. Very simple concept, even though it's going to be just huge on screen. And the Russos did say that they would change the titles of the Infinity War movies because Part 1 and Part 2 will be very, very different in the way that they look and feel. So until we find out what those are, we'll just think of them as Infinity War. But Kevin Feige has promised that Phase 3 is just going to be the weirdest, most amazing thing ever. It's going to look so different from the previous Marvel phases like Phase 1, Phase 2. So just get really excited, mostly about the new characters. Black Panther, Captain Marvel, the new Spider-Man movie. It is going to be so amazing. But what's going to happen next is I'll do my Ninja Turtles Easter egg video. If you haven't seen the movie, be sure to go see it this weekend. There's a bunch of Easter eggs for the classic animated series, for the old movies. There's even an Easter egg for the comic book, so see if you can spot that. So while you guys wait for my next video to post, you can click here to learn all about the Guardians of the Galaxy villain, and you can click here for my Avengers Infinity War teaser video. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Let's high five. I'll see you guys tonight.